Yeah, so I work with Calvin College, as was said in the introduction. So, quick shameless plug. We've got a great international community at Calvin. I've been working there for the past 6 years, and it's been continually growing and attracting people from various backgrounds. And we also are leaders in engaging the world, sending students to countries for study abroad programs and things like that. So, those of you who have children who are college age and so on, give us a look. Come out and visit. But anyway, I'm here to talk a bit about working with immigrants, international buyers, and in the context of selling West Michigan. And for me, I live very vicariously through my wife, who is a realtor. So I hear some of the challenges and so on. So some of the material that I'm going to be talking through are things that we've discussed together, things that I've experienced with her, as well as stories that I've had myself and my own growing up, having grown up in various different countries and interacted with different people. So hopefully these are, you'll take some salient points, things that hopefully will help you as you go out and engage with folks from different backgrounds. So there are just a few different themes that kind of came together as I thought through how would you, work with immigrants, international buyers in this area. The first one is to, listen, establish trust, and educate them about the community here. And I'll flesh these out as we go along. We'll be talking about finding out who the boss is in the relationships, who are the main decision makers. Who might be people you don't expect in the family unit. Talking a bit about, understanding, cultural norms, some kind of suggestions, ideas to go about addressing and understanding what those would be. Developing a network of resources, or offering those up to clients, and then just concluding and talking about how this is such a high investment in terms of time, energy, to really introduce clients and work with clients that are coming from diverse backgrounds, but it also brings a really high reward as well. So those are the topics that we'll kind of talk about. In terms of establishing trust, the first thing really is helping them understand that you are on their side. I mean, a lot of these things, well, maybe even before I jump into all of this, a quick question that I even have for all of you is, when you work with clients from anywhere, whether they're West Michigan International, what are some of the things that clients are looking for? What are the factors that impact their decision on buying home? Anyone want to offer up some suggestions, ideas? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. 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 Sure, absolutely. So hopefully you'll hear some on the immigration side from my colleague here. Hopefully we'll have some answers. But yes, in terms of, understanding what kind of mortgages can we get, that kind of thing. You're just working with clients in general. What other questions do you often get, or concerns or factors are they looking for? School districts, neighborhood, communities, what the community has to offer. And the thing is, with immigrants, with people coming from outside of the United States, guess what? They're still going to need those same desires. And so I guess the first thing that I want to say is, sometimes I encounter folks who get really intimidated by, oh my gosh, this is somebody coming from a different background. How am I going to establish a relationship with them, and they see the world differently and so on. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of the same desires, wants, things that you're looking for are things that they would be looking for as well in coming here. And so the first step is just to remind yourself, I've already got a good tool set already to begin with. It's just that I might have to go a little bit of an extra mile in helping them understand what the context is here. So with that, establishing trust, that's something you have to do with any client. You have to make sure that they understand that you are on their side. When we work in sales, I work in sales. I'm trying to promote my institution. You all, try to help people buy homes. Oftentimes, people wonder, what's your angle? What are you trying to get out of this? And it's really helping this person understand, look, I'm here to help you be happy. My success comes from your satisfaction. And so really driving that point home to them. Along with that, not making promises that you can't keep, obviously goes a long way towards establishing that trust. It's very easy to want to be helpful and try to promise things, but again, just trying to be realistic, I think, is important. Along with that goes a listening spirit. I can't emphasize this enough. This will come up multiple times as I talk. Asking questions. Ask multiple questions about these families, where they're from, what are their needs. Because as I mentioned before, these folks have the same needs that we have, whether it's a good school district or a nice neighborhood or whatever it might be. But the hierarchy of those needs might look a little bit different. I have just an example even that I heard about the other day that I was just talking with my wife and I. A family that is looking for a place, and the main thing that they're looking for is a home that has a main floor master. And they're, probably, middle age, they're very healthy, and it seems weird. Why are they always looking for this type of home? It seems very unique. But it turns out that from their specific culture and their background, there's an expectation that they're going to be taking care of their parents eventually. And so there's a need to kind of have a home that would provide that type of access. And so the whole main floor master thing became really important. So that became maybe higher in the hierarchy of needs than maybe necessarily the type of neighborhood or some other factor. So asking those questions is important. There have been times where, you might be showing a home or showing multiple homes. The family says, this is the price range I'm looking for. This is the type of home I'm looking for. And I've seen it where it's taken weeks and weeks and weeks of showing the types of homes that seem to fit, but the family is not willing to commit. And at the end of the day, it turns out that the reason for that was that the family wanted to live in a specific neighborhood that was, next to some other friends of theirs from their home culture. And of course, that gets all tricky with, fair housing and stuff like that as to how do you even ascertain that and how do you help a family with that. But I think the key is, asking questions and getting to the bottom of it. I think is important. Beyond that, educating the families about what the process looks like in the United States. To my colleague's point about mortgages, if they wanted a more short-term mortgage, what does it look like to kind of obtain that? And what kind of lenders might you want to suggest to them? And, just helping them understand what's the traditional, what do families typically look for here in the United States, and how does that differ from their home country? Often, even though they may have bought a home before in their home country, they're still very much a first-time home buyer here in the United States. So they're going to take that same, sort of hand-holding that you might experience with working with first-time home buyers. And don't take anything for granted. Make sure you flesh out and you explain terms to families. This happens to me when I'm presenting on my college. It's very easy for me to get caught up in the higher education language, your SATs and your, this or that, and the family might not even know what these things mean. And so it's really important that you kind of explain terms that to you might seem like very straightforward. An example of that is, the earnest money deposit. I think that's a concept that sometimes even American families struggle with understanding. Why am I writing this check and what is this going to? How do you help? It's key to just, again, with that establishing of trust, explaining this is what this means, this is what this is, and this is what it's going to get you. The last point that oftentimes causes friction is the U.S. real estate bargaining culture. Sometimes, or often, a lot of times, and this is a gross generalization, so families come from different backgrounds, and this might not be the case for everyone, but there are quite a number of cultures that are very different in the way in which they might bargain, or when it comes to putting offers for houses compared to what the United States might do. And so just helping families understand and navigate what does that look like. And understanding that you might have to be a bit more patient, because it might take them some time to understand that, if I'm going to be bidding $50,000 below the list price, they're probably not going to be they're not going to, be wanting to negotiate with you. It might take a few of those interactions before they finally start to get on board. So just be patient with them through that process. So this is even a good kind of segue to talk about establishing who the boss is. In other words, who's the person in the family who's kind of pulling the strings and making the decisions. This will save a lot of time. If you're not sure who that person is, then it can get really hard to, end up at a point where you're actually making progress and representing the needs that they're looking for. And this, oftentimes, I think most people's minds go to, okay, well, obviously it's going to be the man of the family because, most cultures or whatever have this mail-order dynamic. But I want to caution that might not always be the case in every family situation. It may not be the person that you expect. I remember a particular case, again, living vicariously through my wife, where she's working with this family, and the guy is very aggressive, very confident. He's like, this is what I want. This is the type of home. This is the kind of price that I want to bid, even though it's way ridiculously below this price. And, he'd go into homes and spend umpteen, amount of time giving a lecture on why he doesn't like this house. And it's like, that's great. Let's move on. But it just seemed to drag out and take forever. But it turned out that the main decision maker, the one who was really going to get things done in that relationship was the person's fiance in that case. And going to that person and saying, look, this is the situation, this is your budget, this is what you're looking at. If you're going to buy a house, this is what you're going to have to do. And she was able to put her foot down and say, this is what needs to happen, and move things forward. And so other times it might be a case of language barrier. Maybe it's maybe the children are the only ones who have a good enough command of English. And so it might be working with a different family member to help navigate, help the family understand what the commitments are that they're making. And so really just establishing who that is, I think, goes a long way. I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about cultural norms, too, from Dr. Upton, so I'll try not to steal too much from what she's going to say. But the real key here is, doing your homework and, even learning little things about somebody's culture, somebody's background. If you're going to be working with a family for a certain place. We've got great resources. We have the internet. It doesn't take too much effort to learn a bit about what's maybe happening in a certain person's country, a certain person's background, so that when you meet with them, you can say, hey, I just noticed on the news in Jos, Nigeria, there were, these terrorists went out and bombed this whole city. I just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. Did you have any family members there? Did you hear anything? It just shows a little bit of caring. Even if that person might say to you, I'm not really from that place or whatever, I think it just is a gesture of, somewhat of an understanding. And again, if done in the posture of, hey, I want to find out more about who you are. I want to get to know you better. It just shows a bit of effort. So I think those kinds of little things, if you learn little things about the culture, for example, Chinese culture, when you're handing out business cards to a Chinese person, you use two hands. That gesture alone just shows a simple form of understanding there that can communicate volumes about just your willingness to reach across cultures. So those little things, learning about those, I think, can go a long way. Asking permission for things. May I shake your hand? In certain cultures, it might be as a gender boundary there, where oftentimes in certain traditional Muslim cultures, you might not want to, if you're female, shake the male person's hand, so on and so forth. So just asking permission about various actions you might take for granted. Also, asking questions. Again, I mentioned this before. This will keep coming up. Do not make assumptions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to say, I'm not really sure here exactly how best to move forward. What would make you most comfortable, in this type of interaction? So just learning more about them, I think, goes a long way. And this is always a sensitive topic, but just being aware that in certain backgrounds, people might have a different understanding of the gender dynamic. So maybe if you're a female realtor, in certain cultures that might not be a position where they might be used to working with somebody in that type of position. They will get used to that over time and over your continued interaction, but it's just not getting too flustered at the early onset when you're learning and establishing that relationship and persevering through some of those, what could be a challenging interaction. It can also go, it can also go the other way, where a woman might not be comfortable working with a male realtor if they're being helped along the process. So it's just being mindful of the impact of the gender role and what that's like. So obviously with this process, you want to establish or develop a network of resources, and folks like the Right Place and Miller Johnson and others who can help, I think goes a long way. Just developing that network of whether it's lenders, insurance agents, inspectors, if they speak the same language, it can go a long way. Just literally yesterday evening, my wife received a communication from someone who's like, they're ready to go, everything's moving along just fine, purchase agreement has been signed, and they're like, well, actually I want to change my lender. Because this new lender speaks the language that I speak and has been referred to me. And so now working to unpack that and go through that whole process. And so, I think certainly being able to say on the onset, here's some people that I might know who speak that language. And that also it helps the lenders. They might want to refer you, so being able to develop those networks can also, again, the posture of asking, I think is important. Because you don't want to come off, say, assuming that they don't understand anything about West Michigan and the United States. These folks might have been well-traveled. They likely have been well-traveled if they're coming here and hoping to invest in this community. So just asking, would you be interested in some help connecting to the new community, whether it's school information or other types of information, but really from that posture of asking as opposed to assuming that they necessarily need help with those types of investment. But I think, again, just having that open-minded, open spirit is really what I'm hoping to convey. So those are kind of the main points that I really wanted to cover. Just to conclude, this is a high investment. It's working with folks from different cultures does take a little bit more effort. You are going to have to work harder to establish trust, to listen to folks, to educate them. You're going to have to work harder, try to determine in the family dynamic who's the one who's making the decisions, or understanding the cultural norms and what makes them tick. And you're going to have to, encourage them and link them up with networks in ways that you might not have to with an American family. But that high investment is so worth it because there's a huge payoff at the end. There's a huge reward. You broaden your client base, especially if this is a group of folks who are coming from a specific country where we're seeing a lot of immigrants to the Grand Rapids area. They might be willing to refer you to other people within their community. And oftentimes, with immigrant cultures, there's a sense of kind of that trust of, I trust working with this person. And that goes a long way as opposed to going on the internet and finding or calling the next real estate company. And so, that's really important. Your own personal growth. understanding of different cultures. I think there's some benefit to be had there as well. And also with your cultural understanding, your ability to navigate different cultures, I think the cultural intelligence piece that Sandra is going to be talking quite a bit about will certainly help. And obviously diversifying our community here in West Michigan so that we can continue to flourish here and hopefully more businesses come here. So those are kind of the takeaways that I was hoping to leave with you.